today talking about Unit 0, Day 1. We are introducing the Old Testament, but in this class we're not going to call it the Old Testament. We're studying it with an understanding of ancient Judaism and even modern Judaism, and we're going to call it the Tanakh. All right? This is a much better term than the Old Testament. Many people right now, and I would agree with them, would consider the Old Testament to be a problematic term. So we're not going to use that term for the most part. We also, part of why we're calling it the Tanakh and not the Old Testament is because it has a different order of books. Right? So the books inside of the Tanakh are the same, the actual same books. They are in a different order. All right, so you could put Tanakh, same books, different order than Old Testament. Same books, different order. Same books in a different order. Now, there's 3 sections which you can figure out because of the T, the N, and the K all being capitals. So, I'm going to go over what our first one is. We'll summarize this more as we get through the semester. The first one, the TA, stands for Torah. It's our Torah. This is the law. It's the same as, Torah. Torah, the law. This is the first 5 books of the Old Testament. The first 5 books of the Tanakh are the same. It's Genesis, it's Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. You guys probably know at least those 5 off the top of your head, right? The first 5 books is very, very important. That's the Torah. The next section, this one is very difficult to spell. All right, N-E-V, I, apostrophe, I-M. N-E-V, I, apostrophe, I-M. Nevi'im. Nevi'im, I don't know if that's even correct pronunciation, if I'm being honest. Let's see. I'm going to put the English here for each of these. Nevi'im means the prophets. All right, the prophets. Nevi'im is the prophets. In our English Bibles, in our Western Bibles, we have, in those modern Bibles where we call it the Old Testament, this is the big difference, is that we would have the prophets towards the end. They're part of like the third half of the Old Testament, or like in that third section, whatever. I guess not third half, but the later half, right there in the third, the later half. Whereas in the Tanakh, they are second. They follow up the law. It goes from the law to the prophets. And then from the prophets to what we call wisdom texts in the Old Testament. And in this, we call the writings. The writings. So, Ketuvim, K-E-T-U-V, K-E-T-U-V-I-M, Ketuvim, the writings. This is Psalms. You guys have all heard of the book of Psalms, right? Heard the book of Proverbs. We've heard about the book of Job, probably. This is where we get these last sections. So those are in the middle in the Christian Old Testament, whereas in the Jewish Tanakh, they are towards the end. We'll talk about the why of that later. I believe that this is a very important order to read it in. This is the order that Jesus would have read the Old Testament in. If Jesus could read, and there's debate on that, my coworkers and I have actually recently started a debate on that. I don't know why we care, but we've decided to kind of argue back and forth on could he read, how much could he read, how could he write, all of this stuff. But what we know is he studied the Old Testament in this order. So we are going to be studying it in this order as well. If it's good enough for Jesus, it is definitely good enough for me. And it points to Jesus in a way that is really beautiful. It also will help us to understand that the Bible is a library. This is something you really have to have. A Bible, or the Bible, a collection of books. for a library. Here's the thing about this. All three of these sections are parts of a library. Think of them as wings of a library, right? The Bible is not one continual book, not in the Old Testament or the New Testament. It's not one straight book, all right? We call it that, but it's not. It is a collection. It's a whole library. Now, when you are looking at we can do CDs. Well, do you guys know what CDs are? Yeah? Some of you may not. I showed some kids an iPod Shuffle one time, and they had never heard of that. Do you guys know what that is?
No.
Yeah? They're hilarious. They're these tiny, dumb little squares that they don't have an ability to play selected songs. You just hit play, and it just randomly plays whatever songs you loaded on it. And they were the only thing that we had when I was a kid. And then eventually we had iPod Nanos and whatever. Anyways, when you have these, let's say you have a whole bunch of CDs, a whole bunch of different songs on your Spotify playlist, you're not going to listen to all of them or just any random song based on every single mood, right? I might be sometimes in a mood for Taylor Swift, or I might be in a mood for heavy metal, but I'm rarely or never going to be in a mood for both, right? And they're going to have different settings, different ideas, different feelings that I have when I'm feeling them and why. Just like books. Am I going to read a one-piece manga the same way that I read Latin poetry, or the same way that I read an English narrative fiction book? Am I going to read all three of those with the same expectations and emotions? No. Why not? Okay, different layering. I really like that verbiage. Yeah, there's different layering, there's different goals, there's just different ideas, right? They all have different authors. Each of them has a new author different from the last. And their collection, even if they're all in the same library, you don't go to them with the same expectations. What you instead do is you go, why are these put together? Why would somebody put all of these in the same library? And in the Bible, we call the team that did this, we call them redactors. All right, redactors. Oh, we call librarians, right? People who run a library. People that assembled the Bible are called the redactors, is the term we like to use. Assembled the Bible. Put the Bible together. Or editors. They are the editors of the Bible. All right, they are the editors of the Bible. So they put the Bible together into what it is. So they were holy people, they were rabbis, they were trained, we believe. We don't know exactly who they were. But they started assembling the Bible to explain something. It started with the Old Testament. And it took, this is probably an 800-year process, 700-year process. It's not one group that sat down and just did it. It's a long group of people. They took stories from different traditions and different ideas, and they started mashing them together, and they started editing them and changing them to fit one longer purpose. So it is a collection and library that points to something, but it is not a singular book. And they started doing this. Again, I said dates, write them down, right? Redaction starts around, we don't actually know. We're going to use this as our pivot point, because this time period is the time 597 BCE to 538 BCE. This seems to be the time period that they started in earnest, started really seriously editing the Bible together, editing the Tanakh together. So 597 BCE to 538 BCE, somewhere in this time frame, somewhere around this, all right, it's not exactly this time period, somewhere around this time period, they started redacting the Bible. And they did so during a thing called exile. Now, we'll talk more about exile next class. And we'll talk about some illustrations, some things during exile. Exile is kind of the cause that creates the Tanakh. The thing that causes the Tanakh to be written, the thing that makes people start longing for stories of their heritage, is exile. All right, so exile happens. We'll talk about these dates all the time. This word is important. You will need to know this word and know this topic, know what it is, because the whole Bible is shaped because of it. All right, the whole Bible starts really taking shape around this time period, around one thing, one central idea. All right, who needs me to slow down or go back to something? Raise your hand if you need me to slow down, if you need me to go to something. All right, what do you need me to go back to?
Just slow down.
Just slow down. All right, that's fair. I talk fast. I'm going to try to slow down a little bit. All right? William, right? Perfect. All right, I'm trying to remember that. So, they start writing, and here's one of the main central things. Babylon is evil. Now, you put, like, scary faces here, whatever. This is kind of one of their major things. Babylon is evil. Babylon, B-A-B-Y-L-O-N. Babylon, B-A-B-Y-L-O-N. They're the bad guys. They're the ones that have put Israel in exile, all right? So, I know my notes, this is why my notes are ridiculous. Israel in exile. All right, Babylon puts Israel in exile. So they're going to start taking their stories. What do you think the redactors are going to do for the stories they have? What stories do you think they're going to focus on telling? Anybody?
On the bad, like
They'll focus on the bad? Yeah, they'll focus on the collision. If they're hoping to get out of exile one day, what else do you think they're going to do? When they're looking back at the stories of their heritage, of their people. You're going to tell the collision. What else are they going to do? Yeah, how they got out historically, right? How they've gotten out of other situations. They're going to tell hopeful stories as well. So they're going to shape everything to, we'll get past it, we'll get over it, we'll have a hero rise up and kill you, you evil people, right? And exile, let me stress to you, exile is terrible. It is traumatic. Miss Wester and I, the other 9th grade Bible teacher, one of the other ones, she and I were talking about how we're going through this lesson. One of the things she pointed out is COVID, right? COVID was traumatic for a lot of people. Seeing disease sweep through, seeing disease is scary, it's traumatic. It's the kind of thing that we now think of pre-COVID, post-COVID, right? Before that happened, after that happened. We probably all have a moment like that in our lives of a traumatic thing. For the redactors of the Bible, the editors of the Bible, this was exile. Because exile is a time, I'm going to give some descriptions, some components of exile. You take people and you remove them from their home. Our country has done this to people, right? This is how we started, was white colonialists stealing Africans and enslaving them, capturing them, taking them from their homeland. That is how our country started. It's traumatic. It's destructive and evil, right? So we started doing that. This is what Babylon was doing. Enslaving the nation of Israel. For 60 years, they were basically committing the Holocaust for like 60 years, right? This is like a 60-year-long Holocaust. They're enslaving them. They're taking the people that are the smartest, the people that are best at writing, and they're saying, we don't want you to reproduce anymore. Now, anybody have a good idea? What do you think the best way to ensure that people don't reproduce would be? That you say, I don't like those people of Israel. Okay, you can kill them. What's another good way? Still want to get some use out of them, so you're not going to kill them. Shout it out. You're going to enslave them. Here's another thing. It's good to have a humiliation component, right? To make sure everyone's scared of you. You want people to be scared, think you're some big tough guy. So Babylon would take all the men into the middle of a courtyard, into the middle of the city. They'd make everybody watch as they take a bunch of men, and they're going to hold them down, and they would take 2 big rocks and smash their testicles. Turn them into dust. All right, yeah, get your squirms out, right? I'm not joking that they would literally smash their testicles into dust with 2 big rocks. Get used to weird things in this class, right? This is what they would do. They would gouge people's eyes out and say, you are now you are a servant, you're just an ox, and they would make them plow fields with gouged out eyes. It was terrible stuff. This is the kind of thing that the editors of the Bible have experienced in their personal lives. Right? I don't know just how much it was for them. We don't know what exactly happened to them. But we know some physical trauma, emotional trauma happened to the editors of the Bible. So when we read the Bible, they're taking stories of their heritage that are going to be important to them. Right? They're clinging on to these, and they're going to rewrite them in a way to show how good God is, to show Babylon is evil, and to try to get out of this and to try to find hope. Right? These stories that we're going to read to this class, this semester, are important for these reasons. Now, here's what we have to know next. I have just a few more things. We're going to be done as soon as I can be. We need to know genre. Genre and literature. What you guys know literature? Genre. Do we all know what genre is? Right? A style, a component. It's a literary style. Genre, G-E-R, or G-E-N-R-E. G-E-N-R-E if you don't know how to spell it. If you don't know what it is. Genre. Styles of literature, right? These are styles of writing. You have poetry, you have history, you have all of these things. Styles of writing. Literary genres. Now, I'm going to use some words that I'm recording it so I clearly feel confident about it. I put it in my syllabus. I clearly feel confident about it. I'm going to use some words some people don't always like, but I need you to do one thing for me. This is the big thing that is going to appear on a test one day, that the next few assignments we're going to have to do are based on this thing. You can take notes either on a new piece of paper, one big diagram I'm going to draw, or you can do it in a small thing, or you can just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, list them numerically. Don't care how you do it. I'm not grading your notes. I need it to be helpful for you. So I need you to write down the definitions of the things I give, and I need you to have them at least numerically if you don't do it in a diagram like I do. But I like doing it in an overlapping diagram. And then I'm going to give you some scary definitions. All right. While I do this, somebody tell me what myth means. What is a myth?
Like a legend?
A legend. Okay, what else? No wrong answers. Just shout it out. What's a myth?
Something in the past?
Something in the past. Okay, you're pretty close.
Like Zeus.
Okay, Zeus, that's an example. All right, a myth is a generational story. Story using cosmic metaphor. All right, generational story. Can you guys read my handwriting?
Sure.
A little bit, sure.
It's just a
Can I
screen
come
of
up closer?
Yeah, you can move up. I don't know who asked that, but yeah, whoever that was. We're just going to do that. How about that? That's better? All right. Generational story using cosmic metaphor. All right. These are passed down from generation to generation. I want you to write something like put an arrow to it or write it to the side. Put does not mean a fake. Does not mean fake. Because of the way we use the word myth in modern English, we say, oh, that's a myth, and we mean somebody's wrong or fake or it's a lie, right? That is not what I'm saying. I want to make it very, very clear. Especially, I'm recording this, so I'm recording this to make it very clear too. I am not saying a myth is fake. I'm not saying it's a lie. I'm using it as a literary genre to say it's generational story using cosmic metaphor. And it's, yes. What? Can you wait just a second? Because I really want you to get all of this stuff down. And then yes. So, it's using cosmic metaphor. It wants to tell you certain purposes, right? We're going to talk about those next class, the purposes of this. So, we have that. Now, that is going to be important. All right, we're going to see these, some people would argue, in the Old Testament. That's why we're looking at it like this. People would argue we see these. Some people would say we've never seen this in the Old Testament. It's going to be up to you this semester as we read stories to decide, do you think that story fits into a myth? Do you think it counts as a myth? Or do you think that it's, here's the other word we're going to use, on the opposite end of the spectrum. History. This one's pretty easy. We know what history is, right? History is straight up facts. Straight up facts, just factual, nothing else. No opinions, nothing, just the information, right? Author only cares about events. Right? Over here on history, the author only cares about the events there. Whereas only here, author cares about morals or beliefs. All right, aside from the entertainment, does the actual story of Spider-Man really matter when we look at Spider-Man? The story doesn't matter, right? It's about good triumphing over evil. It's about who wins in the end, right? That's the point of Spider-Man, is who wins. Now, if I have him fighting Doc Ock or Green Goblin or the Spot, as they do in the Beyond the Spider-Verse, whoever he's fighting doesn't really matter, right? It could be any stand-in villain. The events don't matter. The beliefs and the moral, the good feeling is what matters there. Whereas if I'm telling you a story about World War II, the thing that matters is the events, right? The exact events as they happened are the thing that matter the most. So we have myth over here, we have history. Now, in our middle circle here, I did not come up with this term. Mytho-history or myth history, whatever. Mytho-history is the term I use typically. Mytho-history. Factual historical events. With added myth element. To emphasize point. All right. Factual historical events with added myth element to emphasize points. So, do we all know that Mulan, we know the movie, right? Mulan movie is awesome. There was a real warrior princess in China, right? She is a historical person in some ways. But is that movie a factual historical movie? No, right? It's based on a historical person, a historical character, but they have mythic elements, right? They have dragons, they have ancestor ghosts, they have a weird cricket, they have a really smart horse. They have, the way that the Hun looks is crazy, right? They have mythic elements added to it. For what? What are the reasons of adding the mythic elements? Yeah. Entertainment. What else? Any other possible reasons? They want to make you know it's about the ancestors, right? It's about the ancestors. The ancestors have sent somebody to help. They have added mythic things to make sure, look, Mulan's going to have the ancestors help, right? This is myth history. You're taking factual things and you're adding to it, you're removing from it, you're changing things to make sure a particular point is added. And maybe it's just for entertainment. Now, we have probably my personal favorite one. I love modern folklore. Folklore. This one is moving further and further towards the myth side, right? It starts from people. Folk, German for people. Lore, guess what that is? Stories, we know that, right? These start as human stories. They started at one point as human stories. Exaggerated over time until it is myth-like. These are legends. These are, all right, my favorite one that I've heard. I barely can read that. Exaggerated over time until it is myth-like. Exaggerated over time. So added to, altered, exaggerated over time until it is myth-like. My favorite example of this was from a student last year. I had them give examples. You guys will do that. You'll have to give me some examples of these. She gave one of folklore. She said, my grandfather's immigration story. Right? Who here has a grandparent that was an immigrant that came from Mexico or somewhere else? Right? I'm sure they have. Do they have crazy immigration stories that you're not sure if they're just kind of exaggerating or if it's true? Right? This girl said, oh, my granddad told me that he came across the river as a baby and then rode on the back of a coyote through the desert under the moonlight for 3 days straight. Which, maybe, probably not, right? It's kind of this folk story. It's exaggerated. And it's like, man, you're riding coyotes through the desert. You're sounding myth-like, right? Is some coyote able to help you? And yes, it is true that her grandfather came here and had to struggle like that. But it's not true all the ways he did it. He's exaggerating it to make himself sound better or because it's funny. I don't know. My grandfather told all sorts of weird stories. Another good example of this is, I'm gonna offend all of you with my Spanish. This is a good chance to laugh at me. Is La Llorona? Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. How do I say that? Someone say it nice and loud for me.
La Llorona.
Kind of sounds the same to me, if I'm being honest with you. Say it again.
La Llorona.
La Llorona.
Bro.
What am I doing wrong?
The accent.
I know, I feel weird if I do the accent. I feel like then I'm going to get, fired. If I try to do an accent, I feel like that'll just be even more offensive. All right, what she said, though, right? You guys all know that story. It's for maybe the 2 or 3, 4 people that don't. Every single culture has something like this. What is the story? Someone give me a quick 2-sentence synopsis of that story. Shout it out for me.
Girl crying because of her kids.
A girl crying because of her kids. All right, what? Yeah. Yeah, a woman drowns both her kids. And then if you go into the woods at night, you hear her screaming and she might drown you, right? Have you guys not heard that version of it? No? Some versions of that would be if you go into the woods, you can die too. Now, what would be a good benefit of telling a kid that story? It's not going to the woods, right? You have a point. You've exaggerated it. You have a point. I recently went camping. As I told you guys, I am Howard. You guys know one of my kids, my foster kids, Howard, right? And I told him that I'd tell this story, and he was annoyed with me, but I'm going to keep doing it anyways. He thought it was funny. My brothers and I recently went camping with him and his brothers. Took them camping at a national park in West Virginia. And in West Virginia, they have a folklore called the Mothman. All right, the Mothman is my favorite piece of folklore. It's a guy that is part human, part moth. And he's said to be a bad omen. You don't go around him. You don't go near him. In the woods, you don't go near the woods at night and say the word Mothman because he's going to come out and get you. He's going to mark you for a curse. He's going to curse you and something bad's going to happen. And we mostly told it because we were able to get Howard and his brother so scared they couldn't go to sleep at night. They struggled to go to sleep. And then we had to reveal to them, no, we're just joking. This is a joke. But it was really fun to stress them out for a couple hours, right? And to scare them. But it's also beneficial because we were camping 25 feet from a major river that if you stumbled into at night, if you weren't paying attention and went to the woods and stumbled into the river at night, you would absolutely get sucked into rapids with 8-foot waterfalls and drown. So guess what we don't want a 10-year-old kid doing in the middle of the night? Going into the woods and falling into a river, right? Because that would be a really horrible experience. So we're telling folklore and making it myth-like. It's true that I don't want you in the woods, but I'm going to try to scare you into that. But again, also it's funny to watch Howard get scared. All right, here's the last one, and then we're done. Biased history. I know, guys, this is long. This is exhausting. You guys are doing awesome. We're going to get up and move in a second. Biased. B-I-A-S-E-D. Events. Factual. All right. Factual events shaped by author to what?
What's the L for?
What's what for?
The little L.
Oh, this is just like an arrow. Like if I did this.
Oh.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just showing that it's underneath that. That's good. Good job asking. Thank you. Shaped by author to shape opinion. Shape or control. You could say control opinion. All right. This is the news, right? This is American news. This is Twitter. This is you guys going to the high school office because you got in trouble for something, or the middle school, going to the principal's office because you got in trouble and saying, well, no, my friend, that kid slapped me in the brain, right? That kid slapped me in the top of the head. I didn't do anything. Okay, yeah, you left out the part where you punched him in the eye. Sure, he slapped you in the head, but you left out the part where you punched him in the eye, right? You're going to leave that part out. Because why would you? You want the principal to think you're innocent. Right? That's what bias history is. Do we understand that one? This one should be pretty easy. It's like propaganda. Right? Yes. Yes, you can go now. All right. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you for waiting. All right. This is propaganda, right? This is the kind of thing where I am changing the narrative to make sure you have one opinion that you get from, right? That you use all the factual things, but you only have one opinion. Here's my personal example that I would give. Let's say we have Martin Luther King Jr. We should know who he is. Say you historical documentary, right? That just lists all the things about him. That's history. What do you get if a white supremacist tells the story of Martin Luther King Jr.? Just shout it out. Bias history, propaganda, right? They're going to make him look bad on purpose. Why? Because they hate the guy. So they're going to say, well, we want to leave some facts out. Maybe they tell you all real things that are technically true, but they're also making sure you believe one thing that is ultimately their opinion, not yours. All right, that's all we're going to lecture on. Here's what I need. We're going to do this quick test today.